For those with limited storage, the smallest, most compact inflatable boats from Highfield are the roll-up models. Sizes range from 2 meters to 3.2 meters in length and are available with either a solid floor or a high-pressure air floor.
Well, today, we're going to unbox 2 of them and see just how long they take to build. Before you open the box, find a clean spot to lay the parts out. You'll need a space about 8 feet wide by about 12 feet long, but the more, the better. Roll-up models are perfect if you have limited storage space. This 280 fits in a box that is 43 inches by 30 inches by 16 inches tall. If you store it vertically, it will fit in a medium-sized closet or on a cabin bunk. This smaller 250 air floor model actually just comes in a bag. Here you can see the standard 17-inch tubes. These are PVC, but you can option Hypalon even in the roll-up series. Each boat comes with a foot pump, oars, repair kit, and removable bench seat. Notice the fully powder-coated aluminum transom? Not only lighter than wood, but it will never absorb water and rot. Now there are 2 models when you order your roll-up. You can order the solid rigid aluminum floor with the slots, or you can order the rigid sort of high-pressure air floor. The difference is pretty simple. The air floor will roll up into a little bit smaller package and it's a little bit lighter. Depending on the model, it can be 6 to 10, maybe even 20 pounds lighter. But the rigid aluminum floor gives you much more like a rigid hull inflatable, a little bit more durable.
This aluminum 280 weighs 93 pounds, while the Air Floor 250 weighs only 62 pounds.
Air floors, like inflatable stand-up paddleboards, are super tough and quite rigid. But if you want the most durable model, the aluminum is a bit tougher. Either series include inflatable keels for tracking and performance. Total assembly from out of the bag to on the water can be done in less than 15 minutes. Let's get to it. Now, while you do get a really good foot pump in the kit, they can take a while to inflate a boat from scratch. And one of the tips we've got is to inflate the boat and then deflate it before assembly just to stretch it out from being packed in a bag. However, if you're going to inflate them often, you're probably going to want another kind of inflation system. And there are a ton of options out in the world, whether it's from the hardware store or a dedicated inflator. So here we've got a standard little 120-volt electric pump, which is a high volume pump. It's important you get a high volume pump, not a high pressure bicycle pump, because they don't push any volume at all, and these boats have quite a bit of air in them. So that is an option you can buy for 20 or 30 bucks. Ryobi has a bunch of cool inflators, and this one's about 30 or 40 bucks. You'll need a battery and a charger with it, but this is a pretty good inflator as well. It'll lock on, so you can leave it alone for a little while, and none of these will overinflate the boat. Now this is my favorite. This is like a mini shop blower, and it's variable speed. And believe it or not, even without an attachment, you can just stick it on the side and inflate the boat partially to do some of the work for you. So these are just tools to get the work done a little bit easier. Again, you can do it with the pump, it just takes a while. The ultimate Mac Daddy is this guy here, which is a 2-stage electric pump. It's a DC electric pump, so it's going to have alligator clips that bolt to your battery. You're going to need a battery, 12-volt battery to light this thing. But what's neat about it is it's 2-stage. So it's got a high volume, low pressure stage. And then when it gets to about 1 PSI, it switches to a high pressure stage. And it will actually pump up to 15 PSI. And what I really like about them, I've used these for paddle boards, is you can set the pressure. In this case, we want the pressure to be, for the big tubes, about 3.5, 3.6 PSI, and the pump will turn off when it hits that pressure. But the floor in the roll-up is a high-pressure floor. It has to be inflated to at least 8.7 PSI, up to no more than 11 PSI. So if you stick this on it, set it to 10, let it go, it's just going to inflate that floor, and you can walk away and do nothing. The easiest option is to get some kind of electric inflator, get it pumped up to the point of about half a PSI, and then switch to your foot pump, because there's not much work left to do once you get to that point.
All Highfields use high-quality flush-mount non-return valves with quarter-turn protective covers. They are designed to make it easy to add or remove air. Remove the cover to access the spring-loaded valve, which has 2 positions, closed for inflating or locked open for easy deflation. You want to check that the valve is not locked in the open position while inflating, or the air will escape when you remove the hose. Simply push in and turn the valve a quarter turn to open or close. It's a good idea to keep the seals clear of debris to avoid air leaks down the road.
It might take an extra few minutes, but inflating the boat for the first time once before starting to assemble does help set its shape. Trust me, you'll spend more time trying to fit the aluminum pieces together if you don't. Now this 280 has 4 floor slots, and you always start with the bow one first. And all you do is you slide it in under the tubes and forward. It's important to center the keel valve in the first slat, because you're going to blow the keel up last. And work your way back one section at a time, lining each up with the one in front. When you get to the aft section, you have to make a bridge with the middle and the aft section and then push them down to set them in place. Just make sure they're lined up evenly with the transom before doing that. You want this whole floor to be square with the transom. Now before you put the side rails in, it's really handy to lift up the deck and put the oar underneath. This will hold the floor off the tubes and make it much easier to put the side rails in. Just make sure the concave section is pointed towards the tubes. When the tubes are inflated, they will hold these side rails in place. And once the floor is in place and the side rails are locked in, it's time to inflate with the inflator of your choice. Start with the aft port side first, inflate them halfway, and work your way to starboard and then around to the bow. Each roll-up model has 3 separate air chambers. It is best to fill them slowly and evenly, balancing the pressure between the air chambers to avoid damage to the interior baffles. Don't go straight to max pressure in the first tube, and don't use a compressed air source, which can damage the valves. Once all 3 appear full, you can then set the pressure to 3.6 psi using a gauge, or using your foot pump, which will max out at about 3.5 psi.
You can check air pressure with the built-in gauge on the foot pump that comes with the aluminum floor models.
One of the nice things about these 2-stage inflators, they will automatically stop at the preset pressure that you've decided upon. With the tubes full, inflate the keel last to about 3.5 pounds, which should place the floor in a level position. If your roll-up has an inflatable floor, the process is a little bit different. Make sure the hole cut in the deck is exactly on top of the valve of the keel. You'll need to get to this valve later. Now inflate the floor to approximately 4 psi, which is about half full. Then push the sides of the floor under the tubes as far as possible, keeping the floor as centered as possible in the boat. Now you can pump to at least 8.7 psi, but don't inflate the floor past 11.5 psi, which is the max pressure for the floor.
You will have to switch the pump to high pressure mode by pulling the center plug to get to 11 psi.
Next and last, inflate the keel to a maximum of 3.6 psi. Remember, keel pressure is critical to the boat's performance. As you can see, the high pressure airfloor is quite rigid. Synthetic rubber Hypalon tubes are glued, but these PVC tubes have welded seams for maximum durability. There are 2 lifting points at the transom and 2 tow bridle points at the bow. Oars can be stowed with these Velcro straps on the inside of the tubes on the larger 280. Even the roll-up models have lightweight rub strakes to help protect the tubes. Notice the flush mount non-return valves? You never have to worry about them catching on your gear or bruising a leg. With the boat inflated, you can install the removable bench seat. If you find it tough, just let a little bit of air out of the front tubes. It has a convenient cup holder and it floats, so if you accidentally drop it in the water, it won't sink to the bottom. This optional storage bag slides over the bench seat. And that's it, you are basically done.
There isn't much maintenance to these boats. If you want them to last, keep them clean and flush out any sand or debris between the floor and the tubes or any corners on a regular basis. Highfield recommends removing the floor for a thorough cleaning twice a season. To deflate and roll up the boats, simply reverse the operation. Deflate the keel first, then the floor if an air floor model, then the tubes starting with the bow tube. Make sure to remove the oars and screw the oar nuts back on to protect the tubes from being punctured before rolling the boat up. If your model has an air floor, you can roll it up with the floor in place. If aluminum, you will have to remove the slats and stash them in their own separate bag.